Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you here today. As you can see, I finally got that haircut I needed. And oh yeah, did I ever need it. So, today we're going to be covering the latest tabletop adventures of Conan the Barbarian, our favorite Sumerian warrior. Specifically, we're talking about Conan the Hyborian Age, the new Conan RPG being published by Monolith. The same folks who put out that cool Conan board game back in 2016. Those who remember that one. Expensive as hell, but well worth it if you're enjoying for that particular aesthetic in your board gaming night. Now, for those of you who are asking yourselves, Zero, have I been hitting the Black Lotus, or didn't we just have a Conan RPG? Well, okay, you're not wrong. The last one was in 2017, my Modifius, using their in-house 2D20 system that they use for all their stuff. They've, snagged a whole bunch of IPs, everything from Fallout to Star Trek, Mutant Chronicles, a whole bunch of things. Not to be confused with the D20 system, which was the basis for the 2003 Conan RPG, published by Mongoose, although they modified the hell out of it, let me tell you. That thing was completely revamped to fit in with the Hyborian Age and Sword and Sorcery kind of feel to it, the low fantasy, kind of heroic fantasy kind of thing. Honestly, it's probably the best version of the D20 system we ever got, as far as I'm concerned. Complicated, obviously, because very crunchy, but still pretty damn good if you're interested in that kind of thing. The Modifius one, though, what can I say? I always felt it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. It's like it's too narrative heavy to be a sim game, but it's also too crunchy to be a story game, if that makes any kind of sense. Was my thing, ultimately. If there's one thing I can say, though, is that Modifius does do their production values very, very, very high quality. Yeah, the book looked nice. It didn't like the system at all, but, it looked nice at least, And before that, of course, there's been a bunch of times Hyborian Age has gotten adapted to tabletop, and RPGs and in war games, going all the way back to the 1960s with Tony Bath's legendary Hyborian campaign. It's still getting talked about to this day in war gaming circles. For that one, if you want to go know more, there's a book out called Tony Bath's Ancient Wargaming. You should really check that one out. Lots and lots of info on that one if you're interested in that kind of thing. So, coming back to the present, this new RPG is going to be coming to Kickstarter later this year, Q4. But we do have the free Quickstart rules that were recently put out to give us an idea of what's coming. So, one thing to note is if you look at the credits, the main guy in charge of the rules is Matt John, who many of you will remember as one of my first interviews here on the channel. He's one of the co-hosts on the Rogues in the House podcast, a sword and sorcery author in his own right. He's got a recent collection of short stories out. It's worth looking into. And he also did not only stuff previously for Monolith, but also he did the Terminator RPG. So this isn't his first rodeo. The guy has some idea what the hell he's doing. Anyway, the quick start starts quickly with some basic intros that, what is the Hyborian Age, what's an RPG, that kind of thing. Also the core themes of the game, which gives us an idea of where they're going with this. You have adventure, big risk, big versus big reward, sword and sorcery, for momentum. So keep things going fast, keep the momentum going, keep the action bold and frenetic, good basis for a Conan RPG. The foundational values are sound for this kind of thing. So after that, we get into the actual mechanics. Now, again, this is a quick start, not a full, RPG. So not everything is going to be included or explained. Stuff like character origins, character creation, equipment lists, stuff like that. The idea is to present a streamlined intro to the Hyborian Age RPG rules in an easy-to-digest manner. Some pre-gens, an adventure to put them through their paces, something to give prospective players a taste of the full thing without, bloating up the page count. So, of course, it's free, so, you don't want to give too much. So, therefore, things are kept pretty simple. There are 4 main stats divided between a straight value and a stat die. In the case of the pre-gens, it's all D6 for them. You have life and stamina points. We'll get to those. Defenses against physical and sorcerer's attacks. It's fairly straightforward. A couple of special abilities that come from your origin, and skills. Skills in this case are not things that you know how to do so much as special abilities or feats that make your character stand out and give them new capabilities compared to other ones. And then you have your simple list of gear, and that's it. Easy. The idea is for pretty much any action worth rolling for, You take your stat die, roll that, add the stat value along with any modifiers, which the game recommends keeping within 1 and 3, either positive or negative. Because, since you're rolling a fairly small range of numbers, so like, if you're rolling a d6, you got 1 through 6. You're adding your stat value and then comparing that to a difficulty number. Any modifier beyond like +1, beyond +3 is going to be a pretty much guaranteed result of something else. So even a +1 in those kind of circumstances is fairly significant. Anyway, you hit the difficulty or higher, you succeed. Otherwise, too bad. So if I have any criticisms of this, is that I kind of wish I knew how the die and value for the stats were related. It's not necessary to know that right now, because, since you're just working out pre-gens, and that's pretty easy. But, a line or two on the subject wouldn't have hurt. Just saying, it's just one of those clear questions I kept wondering in my head, like, okay, how does this work exactly when during character creation? Even though I know it's, not good the focus here. Same thing goes for, like, origins. Basically, where the character grew up, and, the environment they're adapted to from a young age. Those things give particular bonuses, and there's not really any description for that. The kind of things to come at the end of the Kickstarter mentioned there's going to be at least 10 of these, so that's a good selection. I hope to see some interesting stuff in there. There's also something called the Flex die. Now, that is rolled along, that's usually a d10, although it can be a smaller die if you're doing better with it. I write the opposite of the other dice. We'll get to why in a second. Basically, you roll that anytime you roll dice for your character, whether it's a check, an attack, or rolling for damage. So we'll see. And if you hit the highest number on that die, in the case of a d10 it'd be a 10, you get some kind of bonus. Which is why, if you have a better flex die, it's a smaller die, because that means you have a better chance of getting that maximum result. So you can either gain back a little bit of stamina, you auto-succeed at even a failed roll, although you only get the minimum possible results, and if there's ever any different variations. See, the whole Indiana Jones grabbing himself at the edge of the pit instead of falling in, that kind of fly, succeeding by the skin of your teeth kind of situation. Or if you're, rolling your flex die and get max while you're rolling damage, you can do massive damage, which is say you add the maximum value for the dice roll of your weapon along with whatever you rolled for it already. So if you have a d8 for a spear, for instance, you roll a 4, you get a flex, well, you just made 4 plus 8. You just did some serious damage right there. I gotta say, though, I kind of think they could have probably come up with a better name than Flex Die. I'm not sure if that's the most thematically appropriate name for the thing. I mean, Blood Die, Fate Die, Wild Die, something like that, something a bit more Hyborian. And the mechanic itself I have no problems with. It's, an interesting way of making sure that the critical success kind of mechanic that can happen regardless of the actual success or failure of the actual roll that's being done, since you can still gain that stamina point, for instance, even if you fail at a roll, although you're more likely to pick the auto-success, I'd imagine. It's, it's a good mechanic. It doesn't have, too much frequency of occurring, although, obviously it has a 1 in 10 chance of happening, so it's pretty good for a heroic fantasy kind of character. For something being a bit more reliable, you have the aforementioned stamina. There you actually spend points in order to achieve particular results. You start out with your grit value, the grit being one of the 4 stats, your grit value in stamina at the start of the session, and you can then spend it to increase the dice result post-roll. So if you fail your roll by just a little bit, you can jack it up a little past the threshold with a little bit of stamina. Increase your damage, increase the range of thrown weapons, and if it's your last point of stamina, you can also increase your movement, which is also useful. And if it's your last point of stamina, you can actually cause a massive damage result, just as with the flex die, which you can do in addition to the result from the flex die if you get maximum there. So that's a lot of damage right there. It's very much the, using the last ounce of your strength to drive your weapon deep into the heart of your enemy kind of deal, which is nice. I like that. This is definitely a form of kind of like, meta-currency Betty kind of system that I actually like a lot better because it's diegetic. It actually represents a character's inner reserves of strength rather than being some vague, disconnected, metagamey plot coupon kind of thing that I've seen in a lot of other kind of RPGs. Also, it only affects the character's personal rolls, anything they have direct influence on. You're not using this to influence the roles of other characters or NPCs. So it's an interesting way of doing things that I tend to prefer in those kinds of cases. I'll also say something I appreciate that I think people might miss is that rolling a 1 is an auto fail. There's a little box text for that explains it. But it isn't a critical failure. There are no fumbles or crit fails anywhere in this system, as far as I can tell. Now, some people might, scoff at that. It's a traditional kind of thing, and makes things more exciting and stuff like that. But here's the thing: if you're rolling a single die versus something with a bell curve, you have an equal chance of getting a critical failure regardless of the actual roll. So, and especially if you're having a small die, like for instance a D6, as I mentioned. Like the classic example is always comes up is Cyberpunk 2020. That one uses a D10 for its resolution mechanic. And if you roll a 1, that's crit failure. So naturally, there's a 1 in 10 chance of fucking up royally and shooting yourself in the foot every time you roll the dice. Which, it creates the kind of, chaotic, we never know what's going to happen kind of feel to the thing. But this is not that. This is heroic fantasy. This is sword and sorcery. That is not the kind of feel you want to go for. So for this, you would have either some kind of mechanic. If you were going to have a critical failure mechanic, it would be best associated with something like a dice pool or something with a bell curve to the actual results. The fact that it doesn't have one is even better, since that means your characters can be reasonably competent heroes without slipping on banana peels every couple of rounds. You know what I mean? So, because let's face it, when's the last time you ever thought of Conan having a crit failure? Aside from that one time in Rogues in the House when he knocked himself out, and that was because he was dead drunk. So, it's not the kind of thing that happens to these kinds of characters for the most part. Beyond that, the rules cover combat, obviously. I mean, again, also fairly simple. Ranges for missiles and movement are abstracted, but they're still based on actual distances instead of, discrete zones like the Modifius RPG or the Monolith board game, actually. I will say I found it a little bit interesting. There really isn't anything from the Monolith board game in this, outside of, obviously the art, which is, reused from their back catalog, which surprised me a bit. So movement, dice mechanics, all different. All about the only thing I could say that is similar is that stamina and life points are also concepts in the board game, but even then they don't operate like they do here. So, good news for anyone who's never played the board game, so you don't need to do much homework. And although they are planning on releasing something to help, use the stuff from the board game, especially the maps, for the RPG, which is, a good resource. You can double dip on that stuff a little bit, which is always handy for players who happen to have both the RPG and the board game for that. What else? I like that sorcery drains the caster's life to power spells. It's a good way to prevent sorcerers from machine gunning magic missiles all day long, and keeps the kind of, dark magic you don't want to use all the time kind of feel to it. Although sorcerers do have inherent abilities that are not technically spells, or more like just, as I say, inherent to the fact that they are sorcerers of a particular kind. So, things like sensing magic nearby, or in the case of the pre-gen character who's got very much nature magic kind of feel, he has, the ability to put down the signs of Jebel Shag and communicate have a, low-level communication with local fauna, or, sense the feelings of living creatures through touch. The kind of thing that allows you to still do magic stuff even when you're not actively casting spells. Useful. Also, there's no attacks of opportunity, so mobility is very much encouraged. You're not going to get locked into melee. You have 2 actions per round in combat, at least players do. And that can be anything from moving, move and attack and move in any order, attack if you feel like, just, going, or, multiple moves if you really need to book it. And the GM advice, which we'll come to later, actually encourages the GM to keep, his NPCs mobile in combat. Not just have them standing around unless, the situation actually calls for that. Which also keeps, players on their toes, because, sure, you can probably dish out a ton of damage, especially against minion-type enemies, because, those always go down, pretty quick. But if they're constantly moving in and out of, a range of you, well, yeah, you're going to have to think of a new solution than just, attacking twice every round, because there's nobody to attack. They're all out of range. Say, what else? Modifiers are kept to a minimum. There's some stuff, like armor decreasing your ability to be stealthy or sorceress, depending on how heavy it is, the usual stuff. There's a couple of examples, not too much, but it's kind of left mostly to the GM's imagination in this regard. Again, keeping within that rule of threes, +1 +3, -1 to -3, depending on circumstance. Overall, everything is laid out really clearly and cleanly, which is something I appreciate for a quick start. It's all very easy to absorb. Everything is, well organized to make it simple for people who are just getting started with RPGs or just getting started with this particular system to actually understand it and apply it quickly to the table, which is good. After the rules, there's the aforementioned GM advice, and honestly, I do like the approach that they've gone with here in terms of, the kind of advice they're giving. There's an emphasis on the GM being the arbiter of the rules, and that they should ideally adhere to the rules as written, announcing any modifications ahead of time, if at all possible, and also encouraging players to have agency and actually make decisions to, not, even if you're putting them in, dangerous situations, to always, let them have options of what to do and stuff like that, not just railroading them. So, obviously, Matt and company have played a couple RPGs and know what they're talking about. And I must say, fucking thank you, because this is a personal bugbear here. Lately, I have had to read way too many RPGs telling me to ignore the rules as I see fit to make the game more fun. To the people who go for this particular concept, if I need to ignore the rules you wrote to make your game fun, why the fuck would I play your game in the first place? I'm not going to hand you my money to buy your game for the privilege of house ruling away all the issues you should have dealt with in playtest. Okay? I'm not your goddamn paid beta tester, alright? It's just one of those things that just keeps annoying me over the years. Anyway, side rant over. At the end, after all this, we have the starting adventure that comes with the quick start, the Seal of Acheron. It's a bit of a dungeon crawl with the adventurer seeking an ancient ruin that a fellow mercenary insists contains vast wealth. Yeah, it also contains horrible death, which he fails to mention, of course. It's not a big dungeon by any means, but enough for a full game session. A couple hours of play for this. Anyway, again, good layout. Information is well indicated, highlighted. Difficulties are in bold. There's game mastering advice littered through the text in its own font, so it's easy to find. Read aloud text is separated out, so you know exactly what's good. It's pretty well written too, which is good. And one thing that stood out to me is I especially like the various perception checks kind of things that they roll with wits that have different tiers to them. This is something that I like to see in these kinds of things because it allows you to, if you succeed with just the minimum possible result, then it gives you basic info. You just like, oh, there's something here, okay? And each additional tier gives you a bit more of the full picture. It's like, oh, there's something here. And here's a little something weird about it. Oh, it's covered in, these symbols. Oh, it looks kind of like, old Stygian. Kind of don't know what it is. And the next tier is, oh yeah, that's Acheronian. That is, bad news, but also potentially quite lucrative. So, yeah, big risk, big reward, as, the core values say. This is the kind of thing I hope they do more of in future adventures, also for other checks, like sometimes social checks or things like that. It's always good to have those kinds of, different tiers of results that can, lead to different paths for the characters, depending on their own capabilities. Something I like to see a lot. Okay, so all in all, I think this is a good appetizer for what's to come with the full RPG later this year. I mean, if Matt and crew can maintain the quality that they've shown here with the complete book and all the extra modules and rules that they're going to be including in there, I think this is going to be an interesting addition to that long line of Conan RPGs. I mean, the basic mechanics have a solid foundation, simple, but they're effective for what they are. They get out of the way quickly. They're not complex, and they don't require that much brain power to apply in game. The art is good, although I will say it does need a little bit more cheesecake, guys. There's only one image I describe that way, and I know for a fact Monolith has other stuff in their back catalog they can use. So, make me happy in that regard. Anyway, that aside, and other than a few minor niggles, like, what I mentioned earlier, I think also, things like wealth is very abstracted. It's just, considered mostly unimportant. I would personally have treated it more like a stat or something like that. Something that you could just roll on in order to buy things and, having the difficulty based on how expensive they are or hard to find. when it comes to abstract treasure and abstract wealth, that's my personal way of doing things. But, obviously, people's mileage will vary in that regard. But anyway, aside from those minor niggles, this one I think is worth a download. The link for the PDF is going to be in the description, so you can try it out. It certainly won't cost you anything because it's goddamn free. So, I mean, you got nothing to lose. It's definitely worth trying out and seeing if you and your players at your game table will actually enjoy this kind of, the kind of system and their approach to the Hyborian Age. See if it compares to other RPGs of the same sort that you've played in the past and, other RPGs of the same complexity, and you can determine whether or not it'll be worth investing in once the Kickstarter starts at the end of the year. Beyond that, I have been Zero Sum. Thank you all for watching. I'm definitely going to be taking a look at said RPG once it releases, so, keep an eye on the channel for that eventually. I've got other stuff coming up fairly soon, so, also keep an eye there. And I'll see you next time. Adios.